Thunderclap migraine from hell was back, baby. And boy, did it suck. Navigating the ER in the hospital is so overwhelming. Whether you are new to being autoimmune and chronically ill, or this is an old hat for you, it does not matter. Every single time, it is so overwhelming. So when we get to this point of the conversation and the doctor says, how is this usually handled for you? I can easily say, there's actually a protocol in my file that we can utilize for this. So I'm gonna say it loudly for y'all, and I'm gonna say it loudly for myself, but we are doing enough every single day. And so if you do not get your to-do list done, it's okay. I wish that someone had told me, here's how you should dress and brush your hair and present yourself if you want to get taken seriously in an ER setting with a chronic illness. Welcome back to another week of Calling in Sick. I'm your host, Alex Wilson. So this week, I made the episode that I wish I had when I first got diagnosed. I was autoimmune my entire life, but I didn't really start going to hospitals or have a need for acute care until I was diagnosed with vasculitis in 2019. And navigating the ER and the hospital blind as a chronic illness patient is terrifying. You are up against the world, honestly, because people have preconceived notions that ERs are not places for chronic illness, which is somewhat true. You know, you should go see a chronic illness specialist to help you with your disease. However, there are acute periods where you do need emergency medical attention, or maybe you're getting admitted into the hospital. You have a place, and you are allowed to go to the emergency room if you are chronically ill. You are also allowed to get treatment in the emergency room if you are chronically ill. So in this episode, I provide you guys with a little bit of a how-to guide. What to wear and how to look when you go. How to give your medical elevator pitch. What to pack. And how to advocate for yourself. And really what prompted this episode was because I had another inpatient stay last week. And I'm saying inpatient, but I really shouldn't, because I actually never left the ER room because there was not a bed for me. Still reeling from being stuck in a room without any windows for 48 hours. That one did a doozy on the good old mental health. So I guess I'll give you guys a little bit of update on the IVIG therapy that I got last week, and we'll dive on in. I've been in a flare-up basically since April or May, and it's been a really rough go. Some high highs, some low lows. Every time I think I'm starting to normalize and get used to this new spoon count, get used to these new symptoms, this level of pain, this level of fatigue, something happens and I feel like shit hits the fan. And it has been overwhelming, to say the least. And at times I feel like I'm kind of like holding on by a thread. I've been super open about my mental health on my social media, but I guess I haven't really talked about it too much on the podcast yet. I struggle with anxiety and panic attacks, but I also struggle with depression. And like most of you guys know, if you're familiar with those kind of mental health things, that having flare-ups, being in chronic pain, and having this unpredictability roller coaster of diagnoses and health can be really, really challenging and demanding on your mental health. So I don't know why I was dropping in there, but that obviously tells you where my headspace is at today. It's a rough one, but we're going to keep powering through it. So about a month ago, I decided to push the limits and take a work trip. And it was the first time I've done that in years, honestly. I got to New York. I spent 48 hours there. I was with my sister. And when we got back, I was fucked, to say the least. But I kept pushing through. I think was running on excitement or some kind of fumes that I don't even know where they came from. But I was able to push through this crazy week where I did a ton and got a lot done. And by the weekend, by Sunday, I was a mess. I could hardly walk. I was in crippling amount of pain. I was super depressed. Things just weren't looking great. So come Monday last week, I start messaging my doctor saying, hey, things are not looking great right now. Kind of feel like how I did in June, which was the last time I was hospitalized for my autoimmune stuff. What should we do? And throughout the week, things continued to get worse and worse and worse. And so by Thursday morning, I had 2 doctors telling me, Alex, it's time to go to the emergency room. You need to be admitted. Let's try to get this IVIG done inpatient. I thought my IVIG was approved for outpatient, and the pharmacy approved it, but unfortunately my insurance company had not approved it yet. And so this was the only way that I could get the medication that I needed that we knew worked in June for a similar flare-up. And that flare-up in June and this flare-up meant small fiber neuropathy, very awful pain up my entire right leg, and in my right foot. Extreme fatigue, extreme muscular skeletal pain in my shoulders, my neck, my elbows, my wrists and fingers. It's tough when everything hurts like that. But IVIG works really, really well for small fiber neuropathy. And also, in my particular case, although I don't think there's a ton of literature out on this, it's helpful for CRPS. CRPS is called complex regional pain syndrome, and it's complicated. So there's 2 different types of CRPS. One's recoverable, one is less recoverable. Your girl's got the less recoverable kind, apparently. And it ebbs and flows. But IVIG helps tamp it down when nothing else has been able to do that before, besides physical therapy and pushing through it, and ketamine therapy. And, physical therapy, you can continue and you can keep doing that. Ketamine therapy, you can't do that every day. So you're just miserable. So I was stoked in June when we tried IVIG for the first time, and it was really helpful for me. Anyway, this is a huge digression. Let's go back to last week. Thursday, my doctors say you need to go to the emergency room, you need to go to the hospital. 2 months ago or so, I saw my rheumatologist and I told her, I am not going back to the emergency room or getting admitted unless there is a plan of action for what needs to happen, because I've had too many hospitalizations where the suggestion is to go to the ER and be admitted because my symptoms are so bad, but then my case is handed off to a rounding primary team that doesn't really understand my autoimmune diagnoses or my medical history, and I leave with a ton of medical trauma, usually pretty pissed off, and not a ton of solutions. So I made it abundantly clear to my care team that if I am to go to the ER or be admitted, we need to have one of my doctors quarterbacking that experience. So, neuroimmunology, new doctor for me, and rheumatology say, yep, time for you to go to the ER and hospital, let's get you admitted. Neuroimmunology is like, here's my cell phone, I will quarterback this. So I'm finishing up some work, start packing my go bag, and Cooper is in an interview. One of our friends was supposed to come over Thursday night for dinner. She texts us, hey, what time should I come over? And I text her on the side, and I'm like, hey, Cooper's in an interview right now, so he doesn't know this, but we're going to the ER. We can have this dinner another time. And I said, I haven't told Cooper yet. And she's like, LOL, okay. Cooper then responds to the text thread and is like, oh, 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. would be great. And I just kind of like chuckled to myself in my room because he does not know that that will not be great because we will be elsewhere. And then I go, Coops, I have bad news. We're going to the emergency room, which is like, way too casual of a statement, especially when it's coming from a place of a decision and not the usual, which is Cooper saying, we can't do this at home anymore. You need to go to the emergency room. So this was a rare and weird occasion for us both. So we pack our go bag, and I'll get into what goes into that in a little bit here, because I think it's really important that anyone with a chronic illness has a go bag, or at least has a notes list on their phone with everything that they need should they be hospitalized. It just makes it easier for all parties involved. So we get to the ER. I am like having the luckiest day because I only have to wait like 30 minutes. I get put back into the observation area where they get my vitals, they check things, and within another 30 minutes, I am in a room in the back of the ER and getting taken care of and seen immediately, which is unheard of. I'm very used to waiting 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 hours in an emergency waiting room to get seen. So this was awesome. I'm not going to tell you guys what time I went at. You can DM me and I will let you know, but I am not letting the secret out because that's the time that apparently the ER is empty. You can DM me and I will tell you. I will not gatekeep this. So I I get into the emergency room. We get all settled. We start some medications for pain control. The attending ER doctor talks to my neuroimmunologist. Wonderful. And they decide that I'm going to start IVIG in the ER while we wait to be admitted in the hospital. And then I can just move that right up to my room whenever I get admitted. Long story long, I don't ever get admitted. I am in this room in the ER with no windows for over 48 hours. First 24 hours, pain control, wonderful. Start the IVIG. We run 50 milligrams of IVIG in 4 hours. Fluids in a different IV at the same time. You actually can't run fluids in the same IV with IVIG because the interacts and it causes something nasty to happen apparently, but you can run fluids in a different arm with a different IV. So we did that. That first infusion goes fine. Since we aren't in a room and there's literally no place for Cooper to stay, he goes home and I stay there by myself overnight, which just really took me back to the COVID days where I was there by myself, and that is some PTSD. So we're there. I think I slept maybe an hour because there are people screaming in the hallway because it's an emergency room in downtown Austin. Funniest thing I heard was definitely like some drunk people that were past the point of being overserved, as we say in Texas. So I'm laying in the bed. I have a little bit of an IVIG headache starting to percolate, starting to get kind of nauseous, not feeling my best. And I'm hearing this lady just screaming, I'm gonna pee, somebody help me, I'm gonna piss myself. And nobody's helping her. And she just is screaming this for, it could have been hours. Probably was like 5 minutes, but it felt like hours in that room. And finally, this nurse goes, ma'am, please stop screaming. You have already peed yourself 3 times. I do not think you need to go again. You are very drunk and you keep yelling at us, and we're going to need you to calm down. You can leave when you have sobered up. The drunk lady did not like that. She continued to go off about how she had to pee. And eventually I fell asleep, and I don't know what happened to the drunk lady, but she was not there the next day. So I think she sobered up, and I think she was able to go home. But boy, great entertainment for me that night. In the morning, Cooper arrives. This is Friday, and we start the next round of IVIG pretty early. I think around like noonish or something. And that one runs for another 4 hours. Again, 50 milligrams. It was okay. We finish up around 8 p.m., I think, and get home around then. And at that point, I'm like, wow, no bad side effects this time. The first time I had IVIG was in the hospital in June, as I said, and I had awful side effects. They didn't give me any fluids, any pre-meds, and I got really, really ill from it. I had aseptic meningitis, thunderclap migraine, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, whole 9 yards. It was a truly brutal experience. And I thought, okay, I did it. We ran a bunch of fluids. I advocated for myself really well. We did it much slower. We ran it at half the rate that they did last time. I think I'm in the clear and I'm out of the woods. But boy, was I wrong. 2 a.m. rolled around. Thunderclap migraine from hell was back, baby. And boy, did it suck. So I woke up crying, and Cooper's like, oh no, Alex, baby. And he just helps coddle me. Immediately medication, immediately water with electrolytes, immediately cold cap on my head, and he just kind of holds me and itches my back while I just lay there and suffer. It lasted 3 days, I would say this time. Got a little bit better every day. Sumatriptan, which is a migraine medication. That helped tremendously. What else did I do? I laid on my PEMF map from Higher Dose in hopes that that would kind of help settle everything in my body. I think it helped a little bit. I avoided light. I avoided moving. I exclusively drank water and bone broth. Yeah, I think that was it. But it was not a great experience yet again, to the point where I'm now questioning, like, is it worth feeling like this for 3 to 4 days every single month just to have some pain relief? And I'm not quite sure what the answer is on that yet. I'm willing to give this another 2 goes. And if we can get the symptoms to be a little bit better, then I'm all for it. And if we can't, then I'm going to pursue maybe the subcutaneous immunoglobulin, SCIG, which I've heard is tolerated a lot better. So that was a very long diatribe about why I'm doing this episode. Navigating the ER in the hospital is so overwhelming. Whether you are new to being autoimmune and chronically ill, or this is an old hat for you, it does not matter. Every single time it is so overwhelming because it's a new team that does not know you, does not know your story, and you're maybe by yourself in a state where you do not feel good. So I wanted to help provide a little go-to guide that we can all refer to whenever we need it. So without further ado, let's chat how to prepare for an ER stay or a hospitalization. First thing, we got to talk about how you're going to present yourself. I've talked about it on my Instagram and my TikTok before. When you go to a doctor's office, new or established, you got to look a certain way because we have invisible illnesses and we look good when maybe we feel like shit. And sometimes we look like shit when maybe we feel good. So it doesn't make any sense to anybody. So help them help you by leaning into not looking good. I found that to be incredibly helpful. So that means I go in with greasy hair. I'm not putting in dry shampoo. I'm going to brush my hair so I look presentable. You bet your ass I'm not wearing makeup. I'm wearing my glasses, not my contacts. I'm usually wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants and socks and tennis shoes or my slides, which I love. And I'm not dressing up in normal people clothes, outdoor activity clothes. I'm not wearing athletic clothing. And I'm not wearing full-on PJs. Because the pendulum swings on both sides. If you dress up too nice and look like a normal person, no one in that emergency room is going to take your emergency seriously. If you look too disheveled, they're going to think that you're always sick and don't do anything for yourself. And the ER is not a place for a chronic illness to be treated, which I'm sure many of you have also heard in the ER. So, look somewhat presentable, but sick, and I think that will help you. Now, I mentioned it a little bit earlier in the episode, but Cooper and I have a go bag for the ER and the hospital. And I'm going to read you, I had to write this down because obviously I have brain fog. My brain is still mashed potatoes from this IVIG migraine. I'm going to read you what's on this list. Chargers. You don't know how long you're going to stay there. I already told you guys that the ER wait time can be anywhere from 30 minutes to 10 hours. Bring a charger that plugs into the wall. Or also, or, bring one of those little backup portable chargers. Always helpful. You want to have all hands on deck. I like to bring my computer so I can watch TV or a movie or something. Bring your computer charger too. I also like bringing a Kindle so I can read if I don't want to watch TV or a movie. Bring the charger for that. You want to have your electronics ready to go. Next thing is a water bottle. Jury's a little bit out on this because if you go to the ER and you have certain symptoms, you might be looking at a surgery down the road. And if that's the case, you are NPO. That means no food and no water until surgery time. Some people wonder why that is. Like, why can't you have gum? Why can't you have a sucker or a lozenge? Why can't you have any of that before surgery? And it's because you will aspirate and literally choke on whatever is in your stomach and potentially die on the operating table. So let's just avoid that risk fully by listening to the doctors on this one. However, I like to bring my emotional support water bottle because it's emotional support. And also, until I'm told I'm NPO, I'm chugging water because you get dehydrated as hell in those ERs. Third thing, compression gear or sitting gear. So if you're autoimmune or chronically ill, you might have some aches and pains. You might have some circulation issues. Compression socks help so much. So you bet I'm wearing those. When I'm in a really bad state with pain, I will bring my compression pants with me. I won't use them in the waiting room. Well, I haven't yet. Maybe I would. But I do use them when I'm in a private room in the ER and when I'm in my hospital room itself. So if you have some kind of like health tech thing that you use on a daily basis, bring it with you because if you're going to be there a while and you want to maintain your healthy habits that help keep your body at kind of status quo, you might as well have it with you. Does it look absurd when you're coming in with like a suitcase of stuff for a hospitalization that you don't even know if you're having yet? Absolutely. So maybe leave it in the car and only come in with the essentials for the ER. Send that caregiver out to the car to go get the other things when you've been admitted officially. 4, You need your ID and you also need your insurance card. I also like to have a medical ID, and this can be on a post-it note, on a index card, on the Notes app on your phone, wherever you want to have it pinned and saved. On that medical ID, you're going to list your diagnoses, the year that you were diagnosed, who is currently managing that diagnosis, and the medications associated that you're currently taking with that diagnosis. Also list any surgeries that you've had, the date, location, any complications. List your allergies, both food and prescriptions. So it's important to have this card because if you're 1, incapacitated, someone can refer to it for you. Or 2, it's just a lot easier when you're in a shit ton of pain and you don't want to talk. You can just hand someone a card and they can put in all of your information into the system. Save yourself time. Okay, next one is masks and hand sanitizer. I don't care if you are anti-mask or pro-mask. A hospital and an ER is not a place you want to fuck around without wearing a mask. There are people coming in with Lord knows what. And if you're autoimmune or chronically ill, we all know that getting sick is an extra burden onto those diseases. So mask up when you're there. When you're in your room in the ER or admitted in the hospital, if you're in a private room, that's when you can take that mask off and feel comfortable. But in the waiting room, hell no. You are rolling the dice there. I also like to bring my own hand sanitizer because I think the hand sanitizer at the hospital smells a little funky. Just saying. Next one is grumpy snacks. If you're waiting for a while, you might get hangry. Your caregiver also might get hangry, so we like to put a couple little small bites into our backpack that we bring with us. And that helps everyone keep a level head amidst any stress or chaos that might unfold and is likely to unfold in these settings. Next one is a deck of cards. This kind of falls into the category of like chargers and electronics. Bring something to entertain you, perhaps your caregiver, that you can interact with each other and take your mind off waiting. Waiting. It's the biggest part of being in the ER and of being in the hospital. You're not on your own schedule. You are on the schedule of your rounding teams, of the nurses on your shift, on your own doctors that are dialing in or talking to and coaching the primary team that's taking care of you. So to pass the time, bring what you need. And lastly, if you can, bring a friend. Be that your partner or be that someone that is just close with you. It's overwhelming to navigate any of this solo, especially in today's world where if you have a chronic condition and you go to the emergency room, you are more likely than not to be met with friction. So having someone with you that can help advocate if you get into that kind of shock paralysis, defensive mode is incredibly helpful. If you can't have someone physically with you, FaceTime them in whenever a provider comes in to chat with you. This helps create a wall of protection. You don't have to be gaslit if there's someone else witnessing it happening because they can intervene or they can speak up for you. And I'm not saying that you can't speak up for yourself, but in my own experiences, I tend to get real quiet when I have a provider talking at me. I think the best example of that was during COVID. I went into the ER, and I was feeling god awful. Little did we know that I had appendicitis percolating, and this was the weekend before. And I went in wearing normal people clothes. I think I had just gotten off work, so I just went right there. Cooper couldn't go back with me, and a doctor in the ER told me that he would not treat me and he was going to call the cops unless I left the emergency room because he thought I was there to get high because I'm chronically ill and I had to take X medications. That experience traumatized me forever. It was someone that did not ask what medications I was currently taking, so a total assumption. It was someone that didn't ask about my medical history, and it was someone that wasn't willing to chat. There was no negotiating. This person had their head and their mind already made up about who I was as a person and as a patient. Now, I've questioned, is that malpractice? Probably. Did I pursue it? No. What did I do? I called my dad, and my dad said, "Honey, I'm sorry, this is awful, and I hate that you have to go through this experience and that this is what the system looks like right now, but you got to get out of there." And I left having a shit ton of pain, and you bet it, I was back in the ER the next week with appendicitis and had surgery. So we're going to say that was a lose for everybody in the situation. I couldn't bring Cooper with me because of COVID. However, had he been there, I think it might have played out differently. It was a male doctor, and I'm not saying all male doctors are bad doctors, but at all. My father is a doctor, and I love him, and he has set the gold standard of what that needs to look like to be a good doctor. What I am saying is if you're chronically ill and you're a woman, you are more likely to not be taken seriously. And it's really unfortunate, but that's just the world that we live in. That goes from mismanagement of diagnosing us, that goes to dismissing our pain or symptoms, and probably is why it takes 5 to 7 years on average for anybody to get diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. On top of that, I think it's like less than 10% of all research funding goes to studying women's health. And it wasn't until the 90s where women were even included in research studies for medical purposes. It's actually mind-boggling and infuriating. But I digress yet again because I always do that. You guys are along for the ride and you already know me. So you've been admitted. Now what? Your go bag for the hospital has to be a little bit more robust than your ER go bag because you don't know how long you're going to be there. And nobody wants to wear the same pair of underwear for more than 1 day. And if you do, that's interesting. We're just going to leave it there. So here's what's in my hospital packing bag. Pillow from home, huge. Pillows at the hospital suck. It also is just comforting to have something from home. I also bring a blanket because I like to have my own little home in my hospital bed. It makes me feel safe, and it makes me not feel like I am in a hospital and trapped. Toiletries. This is like you're going on a weekend trip. So what would you bring in your toiletry bag? Your toothbrush and toothpaste, hairbrush, probably a little hair tie or hair clip, face wipes, any kind of face lotion, body lotion, and dry shampoo. Sometimes I shower if I'm in the hospital for a long time. Sometimes I don't, and I just say it's okay if I don't. But I like to have all the things with me so that I can keep myself going and feel like I'm doing some TLC, even if I'm, really just only cruising by. You're also going to need the sleep accoutrement. You need an eye mask and earplugs, both for yourself and if there's someone staying with you. It's loud. There's beeping that's going off all the time. You're hooked up to vital signs and your blood pressure is getting taken every 2 hours, but feels like every 2 minutes. People come in to get your blood work done at like 4 a.m. Doctors start rounding at 6 a.m. sometimes. It is not restful. So if you can maximize your sleep whenever you do get those windows, an eye mask and earplugs will certainly help. Change of clothes. If you're the patient, you don't really need much. You just really need underwear because you're probably going to wear a hospital gown. I like to bring PJs though, just in case I don't need to wear a hospital gown or if I've been there for over 3 days and I just am over it. I will put on my own PJs at that point. Your caregiver definitely needs changes of clothing, full outfits, if they would like. Sometimes Cooper is just like, fuck it, I'm wearing the same thing 3 days in a row. And that's okay too. I do make him change his underwear and his socks, don't worry. And then bonus points if you can find anything that makes the hospital bed that the caregivers have to sleep in a little bit more comfortable, because Lord, those benches are awful. I mean, I've never slept in one, so I wouldn't know, but looking at how Cooper gets dark circles under his eyes after one night on that thing, it's shocking and it feels like a nightmare. So we probably need to come up with something as a group for our caregivers. Someone help me noodle on this, please. But no matter what, you are the captain of your ship. So it's important that you can get in the right mindset. And to do that, I think it's preparation. Preparation is the only thing that's going to help you in these situations be able to navigate it gracefully and navigate it to have the outcome that you want. So let's talk about the anatomy of your medical history elevator pitch. Now, you might have heard of an elevator pitch when you were in college or school and you were applying for jobs and everyone said, have your CV in a 30-second dump that you could say to someone in the elevator, were you to meet like the CEO of a company? Same goes for when you're interacting with Western medicine in an ER setting or in a hospital setting. So there's 4 parts of this. The first part is you're going to state your diagnosis, the year that you were diagnosed, and your current status. You need to be really descriptive about this. I have polyarteritis nodosa. I was diagnosed in 2019. I go up and out of flare-ups every now and then. I was in remission for about 1.5 years. I'm currently not. My disease is currently managed by my rheumatologist, Dr. Patel, and I'm currently taking Rituxan to manage this disease as well as prednisone. Simple, to the point, and straightforward. Then you say, and that's why I'm here today. That's my chief complaint, but I want you to know I also deal with endometriosis, mixed connective tissue disease or lupus, small fiber neuropathy, and CRPS. And I'm telling you this because I know that they can all kind of play together. So I think that it's my polyarteritis nodosa that's at play and enlarge here, but I want you to know that it could be these other things too. Use the words chief complaint. It is the verbiage that's used in Western medicine, and doctors will hear that and pay attention to it a lot quicker, I think. So I'm here today because of this PAN. I was talking to my neuroimmunologist, so-and-so, and my rheumatologist, so-and-so, and they said that I needed to go to the ER and requested that I would be admitted so that we could try to get IVIG done in an inpatient setting since my insurance hasn't approved it outpatient. This helped me back in June when I had my last flare-up, and we're hopeful that it'll help me now. Symptoms, this is what I'm experiencing. Extreme pain. It's in my right leg, behind my right knee. It feels like shooting sharp pain. It's kind of nerve related, I think. Then I also deal with nodule pain. That's the vasculitis, and that feels like a throbbing, aching, deep pain. And those two pains respond to different medications completely. I'm concerned that this disease has progressed and I have new nodules in my leg that I don't know. Do I need to be on higher dose prednisone? Do I need to be changing my medication? We don't know, but it seems that I'm at this acute period where I no longer can walk and I need to have medical attention. Then you pause. Talk a little bit, get their feedback. When they start asking you, so what do you usually do for these flare-ups? You have your game plan. This is where I strongly suggest you have one of your providers write a letter on their letterhead and submit it into your file to be put into the ER that you go to or ERs that you are near you that you might go to and hospitals. And in that letter, it's important that they say the protocol that they would like to have done should you be in the ER. And that can range from steroids, can range from starting a new medication like IVIG, and it can be your pain management plan. So when we get to this point of the conversation and the doctor says, how is this usually handled for you? I can easily say, there's actually a protocol in my file that we can utilize for this. For pain, I respond best to X and Y. For the autoimmune flare-up, I respond really well to A and B. What do you think about those? You chat, you together make a decision, and then you repeat it back to them so that you are on the same page of what's about to happen. At that point, I say, just so you know, I'm also on these medications at home. Will any of those interact with what we're about to go forward with? Done. Fiend. That should be about 3 to 5 minutes. That's where you're able to cut through all the bullshit, state your history, what's wrong, your chief complaint, why you are there, what your goal is, and potential solutions. In doing so, you're going to have expedited care. And that's actually what I experienced last week. Despite how awful the IVIG was, the care was pristine and impeccable. And the doctors were very, very engaging. They were listening to what I had to say, and they were there ready to help me. But of course, there's times where that's not going to be the case, and you're going to follow all of these instructions perfectly, and you're still going to have conflict or friction. And I think a really good example of that is when I had my first IVIG infusion, and I was inpatient in the hospital. I kept advocating for myself, saying, I'm really not feeling well from this IVIG. I think I need more fluids. I'm super nauseous. I'm not able to just orally intake water. And the rounding team, unfortunately, and it was a resident that was making these decisions, didn't want to hear what I had to say, didn't agree that I should need fluids or that I should be at that level of pain, and did not give me fluids or anything to help with the migraine. And I was in a hellhole for literally 2 or 3 days until I had my nurse bypass the resident and call the attending. And I told her, please have the attending come to my room. I need to speak with him because this care is unacceptable right now. And at that point, we had my dad on speakerphone. And I know not everyone can call their dad and say, hey, because you have great medical experience, can you talk to this person for me? But having someone else be your advocate, maybe it's your rheumatologist, maybe it's your primary care doctor, someone that you can direct that attending to speak with on your behalf, that's how you're going to move the needle. And it feels so shitty to have to do that when you already feel like asshole. But if you want to have the care that you deserve to have, sometimes you have to be the quarterback that steers the ship, or the captain that steers the ship. Clearly, I'm a sports girl because captains and quarterbacks and ships, all the same in my head. Okay, so now that we've settled on how you go to the hospital, what you look like, what you pack, how you talk to the providers, and how you advocate for yourself, let's talk about pulling in that care circle. It's so easy when people reach out and say, hey, lean on me, I'm here to help you, to say they're just offering that, but they don't really mean it. You don't know that until you ask them to actually help you. And one thing I've learned this year is that it's important to cycle through different friends as you ask for things, because there is true burnout for people when you continuously ask one person to be there for you. So make a list of the people that are your neighbors, your coworkers, or your friends that you trust to be there for you, or at least to help you do some things. And I think it's very helpful to have specific requests that you want to assign to those individuals. Okay, so let's say you're in the hospital for 5 to 8 days. Someone's going to have to collect your mail for you. Ping one of those neighbors. You might have a few, and have them come and collect that for you. Maybe they also help take the trash bins in and out, water your yard, any of the home maintenance things that you might need. And that's really great for the neighborhood community to support you. The next thing is for your close friends or your close coworkers. And that's going to be pet and child care accommodation and navigation. Now, I can't speak too much on the child care part because I'm not a mom yet, however much I want to be. But I am a dog mom, so I'll talk about that part. We are so fortunate that we've got 2 or 3 friends in Austin that are willing and always say yes without blinking an eye at helping step in to take care of Knox and Teddy. Of course, should we need, we could always use Rover or one of those apps as well. But there's something very comforting just knowing like your dogs are in a safe space that they're familiar with people that they know and love, because they don't know what's going on when you're missing in the hospital for 5 to 8 days. I always like to do a little thank you gift after that because it is a big ask. And that can be as simple as bringing them dinner after when you're home, or getting them coffees when you're home, or some form of a little thank you. The next, I think, most critical thing is relieving the caregiver. I'm lucky Cooper's a saint, and he stays by my side through and through when I'm in the ER or in the hospital. And it's exhausting. He needs to be able to go home and shower, kind of resettle himself, do his work, take meetings, not only in a hospital. But Cooper also has medical trauma, and that's from him not being able to be there with me during some really difficult times, like the ones that I've mentioned so far. So Cooper is most comfortable when there's somebody else that can come in and be there with me if he's going to be gone for a long time. And we've got a group of family and friends in town that cycle in and help Cooper out with this, and that's been so helpful. So make sure that you're not just leaning on your community for support for yourself, but support for your loved ones that are taking care of you. And these are kind of like the froofy things. But when you're in the hospital or in the ER for extended periods and your friends reach out to you and say, I'm so sorry you're there, what can I do? And they don't live near you, have them help you find a show to watch. Pick out some entertainment for you. You probably have decision fatigue, or you're in so much pain that you just can't make the decision of what you want to do with your time. Lean on your friends. It's kind of fun. And then they feel good that they're helping you a little bit. People might offer to order you food. I always say yes to that because the hospital food is absolutely atrocious in Austin, Texas. I'm calling you out hardcore right now. Please do better. I've seen better. It can happen. And so it's really nice when people do that for us as well. And that can be like shooting your friend a Venmo, or if you don't want to coordinate the whole Uber Eats drop-off situation. And then last is just text and phone in. You know, it's a lot of time staring at a wall. It's a lot of time binge watching TV, and the days blend together and get really, really long. And so having your friends check in on you and be there for you is invaluable, and something that I am always incredibly grateful that I have. And something that I'm really grateful that I have friends in my circle that do that for me. And after that is all said and done, and you're getting back home, it's the aftercare support. What do you do? First and foremost, do not just jump back into real life. you need to decompress from whatever just happened to you. Doesn't even matter if nothing traumatic happened, there was no friction relationships in your experience at the ER or hospital. Just being in those environments is a lot on our bodies and a lot on our hearts and our minds. So I like to give myself at least 24 hours, if not 48, where I can just resettle back into my routine and being home. I always feel like going to the hospital or the ER is kind of like going to Vegas because there's no windows and the lights are kind of weird and it's very chilly in there. Just an odd environment. So if you would imagine going to Vegas and having a bender of a weekend and coming back and you'd probably want 1 or 2 days of recovery, you probably really need that if you just had a medical experience because your body is literally recovering. And that's when you can invite your friends over to just watch a movie with you and hang out because you don't need to go anywhere and you are doing enough. And I will yell it from the rooftops, you are doing absolutely enough by just focusing on taking care of yourself and surviving through the day, especially after a really challenging situation like being in the ER or being in the hospital. And I feel like I'm saying that to myself right now because I have been deeply struggling with not feeling like I'm doing enough right now, like I'm dropping the ball in every aspect of my life. And I think it's probably due to the fact that I've had this roller coaster of inpatient and ER visits since June. And I feel like I can't resettle into my routine and my life because there's chaos that keeps erupting every now and then. So I'm going to say it loudly for y'all, and I'm going to say it loudly for myself, but we are doing enough. Every single day has a next day that follows. And so if you do not get your to-do list done, or you don't call back your grandma, or you aren't able to go to an event over the weekend, it's okay. You are doing enough, and you are doing what your body can tolerate. And that's the number one important thing. Okay, and that is my how-to guide for navigating an ER hospital stay. The things you need to pack with you for the ER and/or the hospital, how to present yourself for either situation, the medical card that you need to have, and the protocol on file. I also shared a few tips on advocating for yourself and your medical elevator pitch. I hope that you guys find this episode to be useful. I'm making it because when I was diagnosed in 2019, I went into this world super blind, even though I had been autoimmune my entire life. I hadn't really had a need to be an inpatient and go to the ER that often at that point in my life. And when I got the vasculitis diagnosis, that all changed. And I wish that someone had told me, here's how you should dress and brush your hair and present yourself if you want to get taken seriously in an ER setting with a chronic illness. I wish someone would have told me, here's how you articulate your diagnosis, your medications you're taking, and your chief complaints in a way that's really easy for a medical provider to digest. And here's how you ask for the things that you need, like medications or support or accommodations while you're in the ER or inpatient in the hospital. And of course, I hope that there's some clippable moments in here that you can send to your friends and family so they can better support you while you navigate some challenging times with your health. As always, I love you guys so freaking much. Thank you for bringing joy into my life and just being a part of this family. It's been so fun having you guys comment on posts and getting to know you all better, your stories, your humor, and it's really, really special to me. So thank you all. Love you. Mwah.